The new movie, The Starling, shares the story of loss and grief affecting a married couple until one day a starling arrives.
Film critic Pam talks to the writer of the Netflix movie that stars Melissa McCarthy and Kevin Kline.
Matt Harris, screenwriter for the new Netflix film, The Starling. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
You know, your new film, The Starling, stars Melissa McCarthy, Chris O'Dowd, Kevin Kline. It's an all-star cast. Tell me about the premise, and our audience as well, about the premise of the film.
You know, the premise of the film, it's I've heard it expressed many different ways. Sometimes it's hard for me to tell people what it's about, right? Because it's kind of a small, quirky dramedy that deals with a couple who have been separated by tragedy and are trying to find a way back together. I think that's the easiest way. Somebody else told me, oh, it's a comedy about suicide and sudden infant death syndrome, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to use that description, but it deals with some heavy stuff, and I think it tries to do so in a way that is palatable. And I do think that we all have at one point in our lives, we're going to have to deal with loss if we haven't already. And I think trying to make sense of loss is something that was interesting to me. I wanted to explore that, you know, I wanted to talk about the limits that get stretched, you know, within a marriage. And at the end of the day, really this story is about this couple, you know, and are they going to find a way to get beyond it, right? Because you're never going to get over it. I don't believe you get over things. I think you get beyond them. You find a way to get beyond them, and that's the sort of hopeful message. I think if it exists in this film, is that there is that direction that can be followed. Finding that path can be really difficult, though.
From my understanding, you wrote this back in 2005-ish.
Yeah, that's when it really came out to town. Yeah,
and then. Obviously, we're like, I don't do math very well, more than 15 years later.
Yes, right.
Now we have it. Tell me what happened during that time period, and I understand there were some rewrites that happened. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that journey for you?
You know, it's funny when I look back on the older versions, it's pretty similar in a lot of ways, but you know, it came out with quite a bit of attention. When I say it came out, the script, it sort of gets sent around town. You know, I had an agent, and I was meeting with quite a few people very interested in making it. But Hollywood is, I know you know, it's very fickle, and it can be suddenly, you know, you think you have something that's imminent, and 2 years later, it's still nothing's happened. And so that's kind of what happened with The Starling. It changed hands. It went through, I would say, 3 different directors.
Wow.
And so Ted and I first talked about doing this film together right before he got an offer to do Hidden Figures.
Oh, wow.
So, which is a big film, and obviously he needed to go make that. The Starling's a smaller independent feature. And so he went and did that, but I just assumed that it was finished, you know, that opportunity, you know. But and then I got a call from Ted and the producer. I actually thought it was like a butt dial. I thought they'd accidentally called me. I really did. I said, I don't know, did you mean to call me? And they were like, yes, is The Starling still available? We have this window of opportunity. We have the financing, and we'd like to go to Melissa. She has a small window of availability in her schedule. She had to go off to Australia to shoot. And so it was August of 2019, looked like, and that call was in May of 2019. So it was suddenly very quick. And our producer, Dylan Sellers, had a pretty inspired idea to try and change the genders. And for me, I had lived with this script for like 15 years, like you said. So it was hard for me to find something new in it. And but when we did this, when we made that gender swap, it just breathed a whole new life into the story. I was shocked. I was like, I couldn't wait to read it again. I read it over again. And there were new characters, and they were more exciting and more interesting to me. And, you know, you almost want to kick yourself for not doing it in the first place, to be quite honest with you. And so I really fell in love with the story. So for me, I just couldn't be happier, you know.
Tell me about the importance of bringing that comedic element into the storyline that you wouldn't necessarily say when you pair in attempted suicide and mental health and SIDS.
Right, right. You know, I think Melissa's been saying it best. I've heard her say, you cry at weddings, you laugh at funerals, and that is sort of real world. And for me, part of the storyteller, I wanted to use comedy as a bit of a Trojan horse to be able to deliver, depth and drama and tragedy. The idea of comedy and using comedic actors was something very early on.
We'll have more of Pam's conversation coming up.
The Starling is now available for viewing.